The crowd stood frozen as the little girl's voice pierced through the air. "Daddy, that's my brother," she screamed, her tiny finger trembling as it pointed toward the young boy standing across the street. The millionaire, once proud, powerful, and unshaken by anything life threw at him, suddenly felt his chest tighten. His legs gave way beneath him as he collapsed to the ground, tears welling in his eyes. The people around gasped, not knowing what secret had just been ripped open. And from that moment, everything he had built, everything he had buried, came crashing down. Years earlier, Richard Hall had been the picture of success. He had built an empire from nothing, a self-made millionaire with sharp instincts and an unbreakable will. He owned penthouses, luxury cars, and was known across the city as a man who could turn anything he touched into gold. But beneath the tailored suits and flawless image was a heart that had grown cold. To reach the top, Richard had made sacrifices, some he admitted, most he ignored. And one of those sacrifices was a love he had once cherished, a family he had once dreamed of keeping. Back when he was just a struggling man, Richard had fallen in love with a woman named Sarah. She was his light, the one who reminded him that life was not only about money and ambition but also about kindness, loyalty, and family. Together, they had dreamed of a simple but beautiful life. But when Richard's business began to demand more of him, when investors pressured him to cut all distractions, he chose wealth over love. Sarah, heartbroken and pregnant, had left quietly. Richard, blinded by ambition, told himself she was part of a past he had to forget. He told himself he would build a new life and never look back, but fate doesn't forget. Years later, when Richard was at the height of his empire, he married again, trying to fill the emptiness with a new family. He adored his little daughter, Emily, who became his whole world. Despite all the money, she was the only one who reminded him what innocence and unconditional love looked like. To her, he wasn't a millionaire or a powerful man, he was just daddy. He never told her about his past, never told her that somewhere out there might be another child carrying his blood. That truth, he had buried deep, hoping it would never surface. One afternoon, as Richard walked Emily home from school, they passed by a charity event on the street. Children in worn clothes lined up for free meals. Emily, with her pure heart, stopped and tugged her father's hand, insisting they help. Richard, trying to brush it off, handed a large donation to the organizer, thinking money would ease his guilt. But as Emily looked toward the line, her eyes widened. There was a boy about her age, with the same piercing eyes, the same faint dimple when he smiled shyly at her. Emily gasped, her chest rising and falling rapidly before she screamed, "Daddy, that's my brother." The words struck like thunder. Richard turned, and for the first time in years, he saw what he had tried so hard to erase. The boy's face was unmistakable. His features carried the undeniable shadow of Richard himself. The air left his lungs, his knees buckled, and he collapsed on the cold pavement as tears streamed uncontrollably. Emily clutched his arm, confused and frightened, while the boy looked on in silence, his eyes holding 1,000 unanswered questions. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He replayed everything in his mind, Sarah's face, the promises he had broken, the life he had abandoned. He found out through the charity that Sarah had passed away years earlier, working herself to the bone just to raise their son alone. His boy had grown up without a father, without the life he could have given him. The shame tore through Richard like fire. For all the mansions and cars he had, he suddenly felt like the poorest man alive. Days turned into weeks as Richard tried to find a way to approach his son, whose name he learned was Daniel. The boy was cautious, distant, and didn't understand why a stranger who looked like him suddenly cared. Emily, in her innocence, was the bridge between them. She would sit beside Daniel, talk with him, and bring him small gifts, telling him, "Daddy really wants to know you. He cries when you're not around." Slowly, Daniel began to open his heart, though scars of abandonment still lingered in his eyes. Richard worked tirelessly not only to give Daniel a comfortable life but to earn his forgiveness. He didn't just buy him things, he spent time teaching him, walking him to school, listening to his fears. Every moment was Richard's attempt to rewrite the story he had destroyed. And though the wounds could not be erased overnight, Daniel started to feel something he had never known before, what it was like to have a father. The millionaire who once thought power was everything now realized that true wealth was measured in love, in family, in the bonds money could never buy. Richard had lost years he could never get back, but he refused to waste another second. Standing in front of his children, with Emily holding one hand and Daniel the other, he vowed never again to choose ambition over love, and so, the man who once collapsed in tears on a busy street found himself rising again, not as a millionaire defined by riches, but as a father redeemed by love. His story became a reminder to all who heard it: you can rebuild fortunes, you can regain status, but once you lose family, no empire in the world can replace it.